Welcome back to the Mind Shelf, where ancient wisdom meets modern transformation. Today we're diving deep into one of history's most powerful philosophical frameworks, Stoicism. I'm about to share with you 12 transformative principles that have guided emperors, slaves, and everyone in between for over 2 millennia. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're practical tools that can immediately begin reshaping how you think, feel, and act in your daily life. So grab your notebook, settle in, and prepare to discover the timeless wisdom that could change everything. 12 Stoic principles for immediate life transformation. Stoicism, founded in ancient Athens around 300 BCE, represents one of humanity's most practical and enduring philosophical systems. Unlike many philosophical schools that remain trapped in academic towers, Stoicism was designed for the real world, for people facing real challenges, real setbacks, and real suffering. The Stoic philosophers weren't interested in abstract theorizing. They wanted to create a framework for living well regardless of external circumstances. The word Stoic has been misunderstood in modern times, often associated with emotionless repression or cold indifference. Nothing could be further from the truth. True Stoicism is about emotional intelligence, mental resilience, and finding deep satisfaction through wisdom and virtue. It's about learning to distinguish between what we can and cannot control, and focusing our energy where it matters most. The principles we'll explore today aren't merely historical curiosities. They're battle-tested strategies for navigating uncertainty, overcoming adversity, and building unshakable inner strength. From Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome while facing plague and war, to Epictetus, who rose from slavery to become one of history's greatest teachers, Stoics have proven these principles work under the most challenging conditions imaginable. Principle 1, the dichotomy of control. The foundation of all Stoic wisdom rests on a simple yet profound distinction: the difference between what is up to us and what is not up to us. This principle, known as the dichotomy of control, forms the bedrock of Stoic practice and offers immediate relief from anxiety, frustration, and disappointment. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, opens his manual with these words: "Some things are within our power while others are not." He categorizes everything in life into 2 columns: what we control and what we don't control. According to Stoic philosophy, we control our judgments, our decisions, our responses, and our actions. Everything else, other people's behavior, natural disasters, the past, the future, our reputation, our health, and even our own thoughts and emotions as they initially arise, falls outside our direct control. This doesn't mean we're powerless. Rather, it means we should focus our mental energy and emotional investment on the things we can actually influence. When you worry about your reputation, you're focusing on something largely outside your control: what others think of you. When you focus instead on acting with integrity and authenticity, you're exercising control where you actually have it. The practical application of this principle is transformative. Next time you feel stressed, angry, or anxious, pause and ask yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, practice letting go. If yes, channel that energy into constructive action. This single question can eliminate enormous amounts of unnecessary suffering from your life. Consider a job interview scenario. You cannot control whether you get hired. That depends on factors like other candidates, company needs, and interviewer preferences. But you can control your preparation, your attitude, your presentation, and how you respond to questions. By focusing on these controllable elements rather than the outcome, you'll paradoxically improve your chances while reducing your stress. The dichotomy of control isn't about passive resignation. It's about strategic focus. By concentrating your finite mental and emotional resources on what you can actually influence, you become far more effective in all areas of life. You stop wasting energy on things beyond your reach and start making real progress on things within your power. Principle 2, memento mori. Remember death. E memento mori, remember that you will die. This might seem morbid, but it's actually one of the most life-affirming practices in the Stoic toolkit. The contemplation of death serves multiple purposes. It puts daily problems in perspective. increases gratitude for life, and motivates us to live according to our values rather than deferring our authentic selves to some imaginary future. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of mortality in his personal journal, now known as Meditations. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear but never beginning to live." This wasn't pessimistic brooding but practical wisdom. When we truly understand that our time is limited and uncertain, we naturally prioritize what matters most. Death gives life urgency and meaning. If you knew you had only 1 year to live, would you spend it worried about what your neighbors think of your lawn? Would you hold grudges against family members over petty disagreements? Would you stay in a job that crushes your soul just for security? The awareness of mortality cuts through trivial concerns and illuminates what's truly important. The practice of memento mori also builds resilience. When you regularly contemplate the temporary nature of all things, including your own life, current difficulties seem less overwhelming. The promotion you didn't get, the criticism you received, the relationship that ended, all of these events, painful as they may be, are temporary experiences in a temporary life. This perspective doesn't diminish their significance but prevents them from completely derailing your peace of mind. To practice memento mori, spend a few minutes each day reflecting on mortality, your own and others. This isn't meant to be depressing but clarifying. Think about how you want to be remembered. Consider what legacy you're building through your daily actions and choices. Ask yourself if you're living in alignment with your deepest values or just going through the motions. One powerful exercise is to imagine this is your last day alive. How would you treat the people around you? What would you want to say to loved ones? What experiences would you savor? What regrets would you have, and how can you address them now while you still have time? This contemplation naturally shifts your priorities away from the trivial toward the essential. The awareness of death also enhances gratitude. Each sunrise becomes a gift rather than an expectation. Each conversation with a loved one becomes precious rather than routine. Each healthy breath becomes a blessing rather than an assumption. When you truly understand the finite nature of existence, every moment holds increased value. Principle 3, negative visualization. Premeditatio malorum. Negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum in Latin, involves mentally rehearsing potential setbacks, losses, or challenges before they occur. Far from being pessimistic thinking, this practice serves as psychological immunization, building resilience and appreciation while reducing the shock of unexpected difficulties. The Stoics understood that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the gap between our expectations and reality. When we assume everything will always go smoothly, we're unprepared for inevitable bumps in the road. By occasionally imagining potential difficulties, we become more psychologically flexible and less likely to be devastated when challenges arise. This principle works on multiple levels. First, it builds emotional resilience. When you've already mentally rehearsed losing your job, experiencing health problems, or facing relationship difficulties, you're better equipped to handle these challenges if they actually occur. You've already processed some of the emotional impact and considered potential responses. Second, negative visualization increases gratitude for what you currently have. Imagine for a moment losing your sight. Suddenly, the ability to see colors, read books, and watch sunsets becomes incredibly precious rather than taken for granted. Imagine losing your health, your relationships, or your freedom. This mental exercise naturally increases appreciation for your current circumstances. The practice should be done carefully and purposefully, not as anxious rumination. Set aside specific time, perhaps 5 minutes in the morning, to consider potential challenges. Don't dwell on worst-case scenarios throughout the day, but rather use this focused practice to build psychological strength and perspective. Consider a practical example. Before an important presentation, spend a few minutes imagining potential problems. Maybe the technology fails, or you forget part of your speech, or someone asks a question you can't answer. By mentally rehearsing these scenarios, you're more likely to remain calm if they actually occur. You might even prepare backup plans that improve your actual performance. The key is to visualize challenges without becoming attached to pessimistic outcomes. The goal isn't to expect the worst, but to be prepared for various possibilities. This builds what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking and responses to different situations. Negative visualization also helps with decision-making. Before making important choices, imagine potential negative consequences. This isn't meant to paralyze you with fear, but to help you make more informed decisions. If you can accept the possible downsides, you can proceed with greater confidence. If the potential consequences seem unbearable, you might reconsider your approach. Principle 4, the view from above. The view from above is a perspective-taking exercise that Marcus Aurelius used frequently in his personal reflections. It involves mentally zooming out from your immediate circumstances to see your life, your problems, and your concerns from a cosmic perspective. This practice immediately reduces anxiety and ego-driven suffering while fostering humility and wisdom. When you're caught up in the drama of daily life, worried about deadlines, frustrated by traffic, angry about social media comments, everything feels enormously important. Your problems dominate your entire field of awareness. The view from above offers an antidote to this tunnel vision by expanding your perspective to include larger contexts of space and time. Imagine yourself from the perspective of someone flying overhead in an airplane. Your current location appears as just one tiny spot among millions. Your house, your workplace, your daily route, all shrink to insignificance. The traffic jam that's frustrating you becomes a barely visible line of dots. The deadline that's causing you stress represents just one moment in a vast expanse of time. Now expand further. Imagine viewing Earth from space as astronauts do. Our entire planet appears as a small blue marble floating in infinite darkness. Every human drama, every war, every triumph and tragedy all occur on this tiny speck. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of human experience, but it does provide a counterbalance to excessive self-importance and anxiety. The temporal dimension is equally powerful. Consider your current concerns from the perspective of someone looking back from 100 years in the future. Will anyone remember or care about the presentation you're nervous about? The argument you had with your spouse? The criticism you received at work? Most likely, these events will have faded into complete insignificance. This practice offers immediate relief from overthinking and catastrophizing. When you're spiraling into worry about potential future problems, the view from above reminds you that even if these problems occur, they represent tiny blips in the vast expanse of existence. This doesn't mean your experiences don't matter. They matter enormously to you and your loved ones, but they don't carry the cosmic significance that anxiety makes them seem to have. The view from above also cultivates humility and connection. When you see yourself as one small part of a vast, interconnected whole, petty concerns about status, recognition, and superiority naturally diminish. You begin to see others not as competitors or threats, but as fellow travelers on the same small planet, all dealing with similar fundamental challenges. To practice this principle, regularly take mental breaks from your immediate circumstances. When stress builds up, pause and consciously expand your perspective. Ask yourself, how will this matter in 10 years? How does this look from the perspective of the entire universe? What would someone observing from high above think about this situation? This simple mental shift can immediately reduce stress and restore perspective. Principle 5, present moment awareness. While Stoicism predates Buddhism by centuries, both philosophical traditions recognize the fundamental importance of present moment awareness. The Stoics understood that life occurs only in the present. The past exists only in memory, the future only in imagination. Real living, real choice, and real power exist only in this moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." This isn't about mindless hedonism or ignoring practical planning. Rather, it's about recognizing that happiness and peace are available right now. Regardless of external circumstances, if we learn to inhabit the present moment fully, most human suffering comes from mental time travel. We replay past mistakes, nurse old grievances, and worry about future problems that may never occur. Meanwhile, the actual present moment, the only time when we can actually experience life and take meaningful action, slips by unnoticed. We spend our lives either regretting the past or fearing the future, missing the only time that actually exists. Present moment awareness involves training your attention to remain anchored in current experience rather than drifting into memory or imagination. This doesn't mean suppressing thoughts about past and future when they're useful. Planning, learning from experience, and setting goals all have their place. But it does mean catching yourself when your mind wanders into unproductive rumination or anxiety about things beyond your current control. The practice begins with simple awareness exercises. Throughout the day, periodically check where your attention has gone. Are you mentally rehearsing conversations, replaying past events, or worrying about potential problems? When you notice your mind has wandered from the present, gently guide it back to immediate experience. What can you see, hear, smell, taste, or touch right now? What's actually happening in this moment? One powerful technique is to focus on your breath. Breathing happens only in the present. You can't breathe yesterday's air or tomorrow's air. When anxiety or distraction pulls your mind away from the current moment, returning attention to the breath serves as an anchor to the here and now. Present moment awareness also means fully engaging with whatever you're doing. If you're washing dishes, wash dishes completely rather than mentally preparing for the next task. If you're listening to someone speak, listen fully rather than planning your response. If you're walking, feel your feet touching the ground rather than rushing through the experience to get to your destination. This practice immediately improves the quality of your life experience. When you're fully present, ordinary activities become more satisfying. Colors appear more vivid, tastes become more complex, and interactions with others deepen. You begin to notice beauty and meaning that were always there but previously overlooked due to mental distraction. Present moment awareness also improves decision-making and emotional regulation. When you're grounded in current reality rather than lost in mental projections, you can respond to situations more wisely and calmly. You see things as they actually are rather than through the filter of past conditioning or future fears. Principle 6, virtue as the sole good. The Stoics made a radical claim. Virtue is the only true good, and everything else, health, wealth, reputation, pleasure, represents preferred indifference. This doesn't mean these things don't matter at all, but rather that your happiness and worth as a person don't ultimately depend on them. Only your character, your choices, and your responses to life's circumstances truly determine your well-being. This principle offers profound liberation from external validation and circumstance-dependent happiness. When your sense of worth depends on things outside your control, your income, your appearance, others' opinions, or your achievements, you remain perpetually vulnerable to forces beyond your influence. But when you recognize that your fundamental value comes from your character and choices, you become truly free. The 4 cardinal virtues in Stoicism are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Wisdom involves understanding what truly matters and making sound judgments. Justice means treating others fairly and contributing to the common good. Courage encompasses not only physical bravery but moral courage, doing what's right despite potential costs. Temperance involves moderation and self-discipline in all areas of life. These virtues are entirely within your control, regardless of your circumstances. Whether you're rich or poor, healthy or sick, praised or criticized, you can always choose to act with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. External events might influence the context of your choices, but they can't prevent you from making virtuous decisions. Consider someone who loses their job unexpectedly. If their sense of worth depends primarily on their career success, this event devastates their self-esteem and happiness. But someone who understands virtue as the sole good might view the same situation differently. They can choose to respond with dignity, use the transition as an opportunity for growth, treat people with kindness during a difficult time, and maintain their integrity throughout the process. Their worth remains intact because it depends on their character rather than their employment status. This doesn't mean being passive or indifferent to external outcomes. The Stoics distinguish between preferred indifference, things like health and financial security that are generally preferable, and true goods. You can work toward preferred indifference while maintaining perspective about their ultimate importance. You can strive for success, seek good health, and build meaningful relationships while understanding that your fundamental well-being doesn't depend on achieving these goals. The practical application of this principle involves regularly examining your motivations and reactions. When you feel upset, ask yourself, am I disturbed because something truly important, virtue-related, is at stake, or because I'm not getting something I want? Often you'll discover that your distress stems from attachment to preferred indifference rather than genuine moral concerns. This perspective also improves relationships. When you stop expecting others to behave in ways that make you happy and instead focus on your own virtuous responses to their behavior, relationships become less stressful and more authentic. You can't control whether others are kind, grateful, or reasonable, but you can always choose to respond with your own kindness, gratitude, and reasonableness. Principle 7. Emotional resilience through reason. The Stoics didn't advocate for emotional suppression or robotic indifference. Instead, they developed sophisticated techniques for understanding and regulating emotions through reason. They recognized that while initial emotional reactions might be automatic, our sustained emotional states result from our judgments and interpretations of events. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by things but by their views on things. This insight forms the foundation of what would later become cognitive behavioral therapy. The same external event can produce completely different emotional responses depending on how we interpret its meaning. A job rejection might be devastating if we see it as evidence of our inadequacy, or motivating if we view it as redirection toward a better opportunity. The key insight is that emotions follow thoughts. If you change your thinking about a situation, your emotional response will change accordingly. This doesn't happen instantly. Habitual thought patterns take time to modify, but it does happen reliably. The Stoics developed specific techniques for examining and adjusting the thoughts that drive emotional disturbance. One powerful practice is to identify the specific judgments underlying strong emotions. When you feel angry, what exactly are you telling yourself about the situation? Perhaps, this person should treat me with more respect, or this delay is ruining my entire day. When you feel anxious, what predictions are you making? Maybe, I'm going to fail this test, or people will think I'm incompetent. Once you identify these judgments, you can examine their accuracy and usefulness. Is it really true that one person's rude behavior ruins your entire day? Is it helpful to assume you'll fail before you've even tried? Are your predictions based on evidence or fear? This process doesn't eliminate emotions but helps you respond to them more wisely. Another technique involves reframing situations from multiple perspectives. If someone cancels plans with you, you might initially feel hurt and rejected, but consider alternative explanations. Perhaps they're dealing with a family emergency, feeling overwhelmed with work, or simply need some alone time. Your hurt feelings were based on one particular interpretation, that the cancellation reflected their lack of care for you. But other interpretations are equally plausible and less emotionally disturbing. The Stoics also distinguished between appropriate emotional responses and excessive reactions. Some degree of sadness when experiencing loss is natural and healthy. Some anger in the face of genuine injustice can motivate constructive action. The problem arises when emotions become disproportionate to their triggers or persist long after they've served their purpose. This principle doesn't make you emotionally numb. Instead, it helps you experience emotions more cleanly, feeling what's appropriate to the situation without adding unnecessary layers of interpretation and drama. You might still feel disappointed when things don't go as planned, but you won't compound that disappointment with stories about how this always happens to you, or how the universe is conspiring against you. The practice of emotional resilience through reason requires patience and consistency. Changing deeply ingrained thought patterns doesn't happen overnight, but with regular practice you can develop greater emotional flexibility and resilience. responding to life's challenges with wisdom rather than being swept away by reactive emotions. Principle 8. The discipline of desire. The discipline of desire involves training yourself to want what happens rather than demanding that what you want must happen. This doesn't mean becoming passive or abandoning all preferences, but rather holding your desires lightly and maintaining equanimity regardless of outcomes. Most human suffering comes from the gap between what we want and what we get. We desire specific outcomes, become attached to particular results, and then feel frustrated, disappointed, or angry when reality doesn't match our expectations. The discipline of desire offers an alternative, aligning your will with the way things actually are rather than insisting that things should be different. This principle operates on multiple levels. At the most basic level, it involves accepting present moment reality rather than fighting against what's already happened. If you're stuck in traffic, you can spend energy feeling frustrated about the delay. Or you can accept that traffic is part of urban life and use the time for reflection, listening to music, or simply being present. The traffic exists regardless of your preference. Your emotional response is entirely up to you. At a deeper level, the discipline of desire involves questioning the necessity of your wants. How many of your desires are actually needs, and how many are simply preferences that you've elevated to the status of requirements? Do you need that promotion to be happy, or would you prefer it? Do you need everyone to like you, or would you prefer their approval? This distinction between genuine needs and elevated preferences is crucial for emotional freedom. The Stoics practiced an exercise called reservation clause, mentally adding fate permitting to their plans and desires. Instead of thinking, I will get that job, they would think, I will work toward getting that job, fate permitting. This subtle shift maintains motivation while reducing attachment to specific outcomes. You can still strive for your goals without making your happiness contingent on achieving them. Another aspect of this discipline involves gratitude for what you already have rather than constantly focusing on what's missing. The human mind naturally notices gaps and deficiencies. This tendency helped our ancestors survive by identifying threats and unmet needs. But in modern life, this same tendency can create perpetual dissatisfaction. The practice of gratitude consciously counteracts this bias, training your attention to notice abundance rather than scarcity. The discipline of desire doesn't eliminate ambition or motivation. You can still set goals, work hard, and strive for improvement. The difference is that your peace of mind doesn't depend on achieving specific results. This paradoxically often improves performance, because you're not carrying the additional stress of attachment to outcomes. Consider an athlete preparing for competition. One athlete might think, I must win this race or I'm a failure. Another might think, I'll give my best effort and see what happens. Both athletes might train equally hard, but the second athlete will likely perform better because they're not carrying the additional burden of fear about potential failure. This principle also applies to relationships. You can love someone deeply without needing them to behave in specific ways to maintain your happiness. You can hope for others' success without being devastated by their failures. You can offer help without requiring gratitude in return. This creates more authentic connections because you're relating to people as they are rather than demanding they fulfill your expectations. Principle 9, the discipline of action. The discipline of action focuses on how you engage with the world, ensuring that your actions align with virtue and serve the common good rather than just personal interest. This principle transforms daily activities from mere tasks into opportunities for character development and meaningful contribution. The Stoics believe that humans are inherently social beings designed to work together for mutual benefit. This isn't naive optimism, but practical wisdom. Your individual flourishing is intimately connected to the well-being of your community. When you act only for personal gain without considering broader impacts, you ultimately undermine the social fabric that supports your own thriving. This doesn't mean sacrificing your own interests for others or becoming a doormat. Rather, it means finding the sweet spot where personal fulfillment and social contribution align. When your work serves purposes larger than just earning money, When your relationships are based on mutual support rather than just personal gratification. When your daily choices consider long-term consequences for yourself and others, you experience deeper satisfaction and meaning. The principle begins with mindfulness about your motivations. Before taking action, pause and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I acting from virtue or vice? Will this action benefit myself and others, or am I just seeking immediate gratification or avoiding discomfort? This simple check-in can prevent countless mistakes and align your behavior with your deeper values. Excellence in action also requires what the Stoics called appropriate action, doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. This involves developing practical wisdom about timing, context, and proportionality. The same action might be appropriate in one situation and inappropriate in another. Honesty is generally virtuous, but telling your friend exactly what you think of their outfit right before an important presentation might be unnecessarily cruel. The discipline of action emphasizes process over outcomes. While you can't control the results of your efforts, you can control the quality of your engagement. Did you give your best effort? Did you act with integrity? Did you treat people with respect? Did you remain true to your values even when it was difficult? These process questions are entirely within your control and determine whether your actions build or diminish your character. This principle also involves accepting responsibility for your choices without making excuses. When things go wrong, the natural tendency is to blame external circumstances, other people, or bad luck. But Stoic action takes ownership of whatever part of the outcome was influenced by your own decisions. This isn't about unnecessary guilt, but about learning and growth. What could you have done differently? What lessons can you extract from this experience? Another aspect involves persistence in the face of obstacles. Worthwhile goals rarely come easily, and setbacks are inevitable. The discipline of action maintains focus on your mission despite temporary defeats. This isn't stubborn attachment to specific outcomes, but consistent alignment with your values and purposes. If one approach isn't working, you adapt your strategy while maintaining your principles. The social dimension of this discipline is particularly important in our interconnected world. Your actions ripple outward, affecting family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers in ways you might never see. When you act with consideration for these broader impacts, you contribute to creating the kind of world you want to live in. Small acts of kindness, integrity, and excellence accumulate into cultural change. Principle 10. The discipline of assent. The discipline of assent involves carefully examining your thoughts and beliefs before accepting them as true. Most people automatically believe whatever thoughts appear in their minds. But the Stoics recognize that thoughts are just mental events. Some accurate, some distorted, some helpful, some harmful. Learning to evaluate thoughts rather than automatically accepting them is crucial for emotional well-being and clear judgment. This discipline addresses the fact that your mind constantly generates interpretations, predictions, and evaluations about your experiences. Someone doesn't return your text message, and your mind might automatically generate the thought, "They don't care about me." Your boss seems distracted during a meeting, and you might think, "I'm going to get fired." These thoughts feel true in the moment, but they're actually just one possible interpretation among many. The practice begins with noticing thoughts as they arise rather than being swept away by them. This requires developing what psychologists call metacognition, awareness of your own thinking process. Instead of thinking, "My boss hates me," you learn to think, "I'm having the thought that my boss hates me." This subtle shift creates space between you and your thoughts, allowing for more objective evaluation. Once you notice a thought, you can examine it more carefully. Is this thought based on evidence or assumption? Are there alternative explanations for what you observed? Is this thought helpful or harmful to your well-being and decision-making? Would you accept this level of evidence if someone else presented it to you? These questions help distinguish between accurate perceptions and mental distortions. The Stoics were particularly concerned with impressions that trigger strong emotions. When you feel angry, hurt, or anxious, there's usually a specific thought or belief driving that emotion. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you might think, that person is an inconsiderate jerk who deliberately disrespected me. But is that necessarily true? Perhaps they're rushing to the hospital, didn't see you, or made an honest mistake. Your angry reaction was based on your interpretation, not necessarily on the facts of the situation. This principle is especially relevant in our age of information overload and social media. We're constantly bombarded with claims, opinions, and interpretations from various sources. The discipline of assent helps you evaluate these inputs rather than passively absorbing them. Just because something appears on your feed or gets repeated frequently doesn't make it true or important. The practice also involves questioning your own assumptions and biases. We all carry mental models about how the world works, what people are like, and what events mean. Many of these models were formed early in life and might not be accurate or useful anymore. Regular self-examination helps identify outdated or problematic beliefs that might be limiting your effectiveness or happiness. One useful technique is to look for evidence against your initial interpretations. If you think someone doesn't like you, actively look for evidence of their care or neutral regard. If you believe you're terrible at something, notice instances of competence or improvement. This isn't about delusional positive thinking, but about balanced evaluation that considers all available evidence. The discipline of assent doesn't make you skeptical of everything or paralyzed by doubt. Rather, it helps you hold beliefs appropriately. Strongly when evidence is clear, tentatively when evidence is mixed, and openly when evidence is lacking. This flexibility of mind improves decision-making and reduces the emotional turbulence that comes from clinging too tightly to questionable interpretations. Principle 11. Sympathia, universal connection. Sympathia, often translated as universal connection or cosmic sympathy, represents the Stoic understanding that all things in the universe are interconnected and interdependent. This isn't mystical thinking, but a recognition of the obvious fact that nothing exists in isolation. Your well-being is intimately connected to the well-being of others and the health of the systems that support life. Marcus Aurelius frequently reflected on this interconnectedness in his personal writings. He noted that just as parts of the body work together for the health of the whole organism, individual humans are parts of a larger social organism. When one part suffers, the whole system is affected. When one part thrives, it contributes to overall health. This perspective naturally leads to what we might now call enlightened self-interest, taking care of others because their welfare affects your own. This principle offers a powerful antidote to the isolation and self-centeredness that characterize much of modern life. When you truly understand your deep connection to others, competition transforms into collaboration, and enemies become fellow travelers facing similar challenges. The person who annoys you at work is dealing with their own struggles, fears, and hopes just like you are. The difficult family member carries their own burdens and history of pain. Sympathia also extends to the natural world. The Stoics understood that humans are part of nature, not separate from it. The air you breathe was processed by plants. The food you eat comes from soil and sunshine, and the materials that make up your body will eventually return to the earth. This isn't poetic metaphor, but literal fact. Your health depends on the health of ecosystems, and your actions affect the environment that supports all life. This understanding naturally leads to what the Stoics called justice, acting for the common good rather than purely selfish interests. When you recognize that your individual flourishing is connected to collective flourishing, ethical action becomes not just morally admirable but practically intelligent. Contributing to systems that support everyone's well-being ultimately supports your own well-being. The principle has immediate practical applications in relationships. Instead of seeing conflicts as battles to be won, you can approach them as problems to be solved collaboratively. Instead of trying to get as much as possible from others while giving as little as possible, you can look for ways to create mutual benefit. This shift in perspective often transforms difficult relationships and creates surprising opportunities for cooperation. Sympathia also provides comfort during difficult times. When you're struggling with challenges, it helps to remember that struggle is part of the universal human experience. Every person who has ever lived has faced loss, disappointment, and uncertainty. You're not uniquely unfortunate or alone in your difficulties. This doesn't minimize your pain, but places it in a broader context that can reduce feelings of isolation and self-pity. The practice involves regularly reminding yourself of your connections to others and to the larger systems that support life. When you eat, consider the farmers who grew your food, the truckers who transported it, and the store workers who made it available. When you use technology, think about the countless people whose innovations and labor made these tools possible. This awareness cultivates gratitude and humility. In decision-making, ask yourself how your choices affect others and the broader community. This doesn't mean sacrificing your own needs, but finding solutions that benefit multiple parties. Often, the most sustainable and satisfying choices are those that serve both individual and collective interests. This perspective expands your creativity and problem-solving and often leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. Principle 12, preferred indifference. The final principle involves understanding the category that Stoics called preferred indifference. Things that are generally preferable but don't determine your fundamental well-being. Health, wealth, reputation, and comfort fall into this category. While it's reasonable to prefer these things and work toward them, your happiness and worth don't ultimately depend on having them. This distinction liberates you from the tyranny of external circumstances without making you passive or apathetic. You can pursue career success while understanding that your value as a person doesn't depend on professional achievements. You can work to maintain good health while accepting that illness and aging are part of life. You can enjoy financial security while recognizing that money can't buy the things that matter most. The key insight is that preferred indifference are tools for living well, not the purpose of life itself. Health makes it easier to serve others and pursue meaningful activities. But sick people can still live virtuously and find fulfillment. Wealth provides options and security, but poor people aren't automatically less happy or worthy. Good relationships enhance life's richness, but single people can still experience deep satisfaction and meaning. This perspective prevents the common trap of postponing happiness until external conditions improve. How many people think they'll be happy when they lose weight, find the right relationship, earn more money, or achieve recognition? But these conditional approaches to well-being ensure that satisfaction always remains just out of reach. There's always another goal to achieve, another problem to solve, another milestone to reach. Understanding preferred indifference allows you to enjoy them without being enslaved by them. When good things happen, you can feel grateful without becoming attached. When you lose things you value, you can feel sadness without being devastated. Your emotional baseline doesn't fluctuate wildly based on external circumstances, because you understand that these circumstances don't determine your fundamental well-being. This doesn't mean being indifferent to outcomes or failing to appreciate life's pleasures and benefits. The Stoics weren't ascetics who rejected all worldly goods. Rather, they maintained perspective about the relative importance of different aspects of life. They could enjoy a good meal without needing gourmet food to be happy. They could appreciate beautiful weather without being miserable when it rained. The practical application involves regularly examining your attachments and dependencies. What external conditions do you think you need to be happy? What losses would devastate you? While it's natural to have preferences, it's worth questioning whether you've elevated preferences into psychological necessities. Often you'll discover that many things you think you need are actually just things you want. This principle also helps with decision-making during difficult periods. When facing setbacks or losses, you can ask yourself, is this something that affects my core well-being, or is this a preferred indifferent? Loss of health, relationships, or financial security might be painful and inconvenient, but they don't have to destroy your fundamental sense of worth and purpose. You can work to restore what's been lost while maintaining perspective about what truly matters. The ultimate goal is to hold all external goods lightly, appreciating them when present, working toward them when absent, but never making your happiness contingent on having them. This creates a kind of emotional freedom that's unshakable by external circumstances while still allowing you to engage fully with life's opportunities and challenges. Conclusion: these 12 Stoic principles offer a comprehensive framework for living with wisdom, resilience, and purpose. They're not abstract philosophical concepts, but practical tools that have been tested by countless individuals across centuries of human experience. From ancient Roman emperors to modern business leaders, from historical figures facing extreme adversity to ordinary people dealing with everyday challenges. These principles have proven their value in creating stable happiness and meaningful lives. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its practicality. You don't need to retreat from the world or adopt any particular beliefs about metaphysics or theology. You simply need to apply these principles consistently in your daily life and observe the results. Start with the areas that resonate most strongly with your current challenges, but gradually integrate all 12 principles into your thinking and behavior. Remember that developing Stoic wisdom is a lifelong practice, not a destination. Even the greatest Stoic philosophers continued learning and growing throughout their lives. The goal isn't perfection, but progress. Gradually becoming more skillful at managing your thoughts, emotions, and actions regardless of what circumstances you encounter. These principles work because they align with how life actually operates rather than how we might wish it operated. They help you work with reality instead of against it, find meaning in challenges instead of only in successes, and build happiness from internal resources that can never be taken away. In a world of constant change and uncertainty, these ancient insights offer a foundation of stability and wisdom that's as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. The transformation these principles can create in your life begins immediately. You don't need to master all 12 before seeing benefits. Even applying one principle consistently will begin shifting your experience of daily life. As you practice these ideas and see their effects, you'll naturally want to deepen your understanding and expand your application of Stoic wisdom. Your life can be dramatically different 1 year from now if you commit to integrating these principles into your daily experience. The challenges you face won't necessarily change, but your relationship to those challenges will be transformed. You'll find yourself more resilient in the face of setbacks, more grateful for what you have, more focused on what you can control, and more at peace with uncertainty. This is the promise and gift of Stoic philosophy. Not a life free from problems, but a life equipped with the wisdom to handle any problem with grace and strength. And there you have it, 12 transformative Stoic principles that can begin reshaping your life starting today. These aren't just ancient ideas to admire from a distance. They're practical tools meant to be used. Pick one principle that resonates with you most right now and commit to applying it this week. Notice what changes, then add another principle and another. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every time you pause to ask, is this within my control? Every time you practice gratitude instead of complaining. Every time you choose virtue over convenience. You're building the kind of unshakable inner strength that no external circumstance can touch. If this video helped you see life from a new perspective, subscribe to the Mind Shelf for more wisdom that transforms. Hit that notification bell so you never miss insights that could change everything. And if you know someone who could benefit from these timeless principles, share this video with them. Ancient wisdom is meant to be shared. Until next time, keep building that inner fortress of wisdom, one principle at a time. This is the Mind Shelf, where ancient wisdom meets modern transformation.